The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES for short, is possibly the most recognized game console created. Released nationwide in 1986, New York City was used as a test market in 1985. Due to the video game crash of the early 80s, the console was originally marketed as a toy so that retail stores would not be afraid to carry the console on their shelves. This inspired Nintendo to bundle the console with a couple of strange accessories. The first one, the Robotic Operating Buddy, or ROB for short. It was a small robot that was controlled wirelessly using the same type of screen flashes that the Zapper used. There were two games that were compatible, and both required their own sets of parts. The first, Gyromite, or Robo-Gyro, was a platform game bundled with the system and required two gyros and a spinner, powered by batteries of course. During the gameplay, you would have to switch to control mode and use the ROB to move the gyros onto a red or blue platform. When triggered, these platforms would push the A or B button on the second player controller, causing the column of the corresponding color to raise or lower on the screen, protecting or allowing passage for the player. Using the ROB was a tedious task, as it not only took some patience to move the gyros to the correct spot, but you had to keep them spinning, which required you to move them again to the spinner, and then move it back, only to have to move the other one shortly afterwards. If you waited too long, the gyro would stop spinning and would fall off the platform onto the ground. At that point, you would have to use your hands to move it back on the spinner, or put it in the ROB's hands. The second game, Stack Up, used several round blocks that would be stacked in a particular order based off the pattern display. The game itself had different modes, but the goal was the same: stack the blocks. There were no external sensors attached, so the console had no way to know how the blocks were stacked. It would stop at different times to ask if the blocks were stacked correctly, in which you selected the answer yourself. So you could say yes even if you had not stacked any blocks at all. A completed set of the platforms and the blocks are harder to find than the gyros, and are somewhat expensive. Due to the high price of the bundle and the lack of games it supported, sales were dwindling and production was stopped about a year after the release of the console. The ROB system is a novelty for any collector, but was completely unnecessary and could be replaced by a younger sibling to push the required button for Gyromite, and simply selecting the yes option on the Stack Up game. You can find them on eBay for about $100, but may not include any attachments. Without them, I would not pay more than $40. The ROB was not the only strange accessory bundled with the NES. There was another a short time later. The NES Power Pad. Originally developed and released by Bandai as the Family Fun Fitness, it was a floor mat with 12 pressure-sensitive buttons and is often referred to as the running mat. It was compatible with 6 games in North America. Most simply used the pad to trigger the on-screen characters to run or jump. This was a very early predecessor to the Wii Fit balance board, and many of the games are similar. Not much can be added to explain this accessory. Many of us had the pad or knew somebody that had it when we were kids. It lost its novelty pretty fast. If you had hard floors like I did when you were a kid, it was frustrating to use as the pad was very light and had no grip on either side. It would often slip out from under you while in use and could cause serious injury, especially if near a piece of furniture. It would also wear out easily. For a lot of families, living room space was very valuable, so it would have to be folded up and put away. For many, it meant the pad wound up crumpled up in a closet or exposed to heat in a garage. Since it required a large amount of space when in use, and many parents worried about injury, it would be stored up for an extended amount of time, and ultimately forgotten. When many families traded in their consoles for the next generation, these pads wound up staying behind and often got thrown away years later. The Power Pad is not what I would consider rare. There are plenty of them to go around, so don't pay more than $15 or $20 for one of these. If patient, you could probably get one a lot cheaper. I always save the best for last when it comes to the strange and unusual. And of course, this is no different. All of these are strange, but this last one, this is more than just strange. This is probably the best of the strange. the Miracle Piano Teaching System. It consists of a MIDI keyboard, power supply, foot pedal, NES cartridge, and a connector cable. Originally designed for the NES, upon its release in 1990, it cost $500, which was more than 3 times of the console itself. Due to lack of sales, price was dropped and it was adapted to work with other consoles and even a desktop computer. It was marketed as a fun way to teach kids how to play a piano. The NES version had a couple of games built in. A duck shooting game. No, not this one. There we go. It also had another game featuring the first accessory in this video, the NES ROB. Both of these games require the correct notes to be played in order to progress in the game. So it's basically like it's advertised as, a learning tool. It appears to work. Several of these were given to a class of grade schoolers in the early 90s, and in just a few weeks they were putting on a concert, with the computer as an aid.
Oops.
This is another accessory that is somewhat rare, but not very sought after, keeping prices relatively low. You can get the keyboard for about $40 on eBay, but won't come with the cartridge or the cables. A complete one will cost about $200. Now I got mine on Craigslist for about $15 with the AC adapter, found the cartridge for $1 at a thrift store, and converted a Macintosh compatible cable to the NES using a wire from a broken controller. Now this is something not everyone wants, so if you see one for cheap, get it. Even versions without the Nintendo seal can be used as long as you have the required cable. There are many different cables that can be used with this system. One for the NES, the Super NES, the Genesis, and a slew of cables made for various types of computers. These cables can be a little hard to find because most people didn't know what they were, and when found a few years later after the system and the consoles were given away or sold, they wind up getting discarded. So there are definitely more pianos out there than the connector cables. So if you see one for the NES, Sega Genesis, or the Super Nintendo, grab it, because they can always be used to trade in for some other goodies later. These are just a few weird accessories I've come across in my days of video game collecting, so keep a lookout for the strange and unusual, and please check out my other videos.